And I want to give you a little synopsis or brief thought that I've used some in sermons around the country. And let me share with you a scripture or two here right quickly. Okay. Paul wrote to young Timothy, and Paul said, "Let no man despise thy youth." Now what he's saying, he's not saying let no man despise the fact that you're young. He's saying let no man despise you because you act too much like a youth. Let no man despise thy youth. In other words, you behave yourself so nobody will despise you. What he's saying is quit sitting back in the back, slouching down, and writing notes. And what he's saying is quit your dirty rock music and straighten up your life and act like a Christian ought to act. Then he said, no man despise thy youth. Now here's an interesting thing. He's talking to a young man here. He said, but be thou an example of the believers. Well, I always thought the adults are supposed to be an example of the kids. That's not what Paul said here. He said that the young people should be an example of the older people. That means, it says, let no man be an example of the believers. And he lists different ways. In word, the way you talk. That's one reason why I teach our young folks here they shouldn't use the jargon of the world. Blast does not mean a good time, means a loud noise. Neat means not wrinkled, but pressed. Bread is something you eat, not something that you spend. We teach our young folks here at First Baptist Church that's the jargon of the day, and so is killing babies, the habit of our day, and so is the lack of respect and indecency, and so forth. Paul said that the young people should be an example to the older people in the way they talk. And he goes on to say, in conversation. That word conversation means in every way you express yourself. Your entire manner of life, your talk, your walk, every way you express yourself. The young people should be an example of the believers. He goes on to say, in charity. And that means in love and the expressing of that love. In spirit. We heard of something about that last night from our little timid Dr. Bob Gray. About spirit. Young people should have a better spirit than anybody in the church, a better attitude, and be an example of it. In faith, in purity, till I come, give attendance reading to exhortation, to doctrine. Now, then he says, neglect not the gift that is in thee, which was given thee with the prophecy, with the laying on of the hands of the presbytery. Meditate upon these things, give thyself wholly to them. That's what I want you to do. Go home and give yourself wholly, everything you got. I mean, just spend yourself in the work of God. Now then, here's what I want to talk about for just about 5-10 minutes. He says, Timothy, you got yourself in this shape now. He said, Timothy, you got yourself now in this shape. He said you're behaving yourself so nobody can despise the fact that you're young. He said, Timothy, you got yourself as an example now in word, in conversation, and in love, and in faith, and in purity. Now he said you got yourself in as you ought to be. Now look at me carefully. He said, Timothy, take heed to thyself. What he said was, when you do all of this and become the right kind of young person, step back and take heed to yourself. Now that little term, take heed to yourself, means examine thyself, study thyself, and copy thyself. That's what he's saying. He's saying, Timothy, you copy as you grow older the young Timothy. What you fellows think of as Christian growth is Christian coldness and deadness. He's saying you preach as actively when you're an old preacher as you did when you're a young preacher. He's saying you have as much zeal as an old preacher as you have when you're a young preacher. When I began preaching at 20, pastoring at the age of 21, preaching at the age of 19, I didn't know how to build a church. That little Grange Hall Baptist church, I didn't know a thing about how to build a church. I fell on my face and said, God, you've got to help me. I don't even know what a church budget is. We didn't, at our college, nobody taught us how to have a church budget. Nobody told us how to baptize. Nobody told us how to give the Lord's Supper. Nobody told us how to preach. They taught us Reinhold Niebuhr and Emil Brunner and all that garbage, and Kierkegaard, but I didn't know how to do it. And I looked up and I said, God, you got to help me. And praise his name, he did help me. And that little church began to be the exciting church of the whole county. And now, when I went to Henderson, Texas, I said, now, what am I going to be down here? I did what Paul said. I studied the young Jack Hyles and copied him. I went to Garland, Texas, and what did I do there? I copied the Jack Hyles from Henderson, Texas. I came to Hammond, Indiana. What do I do here? I copied the Jack Hyles from Garland, Texas. What Paul is saying here, he's saying, don't you change. You stay like you were. He said, but Brother Hyles, how about growth in grace? Growth in grace doesn't mean adding anything. It means growing in the things you've already got. I got 5 fingers on this left hand. I got news for you. That's exactly how many I had when I was born. He's saying, don't look for a bunch of new stuff. Grow in the old stuff. Grow in prayer. Grow in purity. Grow in faith. Grow in soul winning. Grow in church building. But fully on this new garbage coming out. I wouldn't give you a dime for all these stupid seminars, feminars, heminars, stupid R's, and all the rest of them going on around America. We need to get back to the very basic. And most of you older preachers did a lot better when you were young. Copy. That's what I do. You know who my favorite preacher is? The young Jack Hyles. I know how to build a church now. I know how to draw up a church budget now. Okay, shall I do it the way I know how to do it, or shall I do it the way God led me to do it, but I didn't know how to do it? And that's what I'm trying to tell you this week. I want you to copy. For example, the young preacher. Copy young preacher in his preaching. You know, I pounded the pulpit when I was young. I pound the pulpit now. I run across a platform when I was young, and I run across a stupid platform. I mean, on the Sunday morning worship hour. That's the way I used to do it. I'm not going to stop it. You say, don't you think you ought to get more dignified? No, I watched you do that and saw what it did to you. I'm saying I copy the young Jack Hyles in his preaching. I copy the young Jack Hyles in his Bible. Young Jack Hyles used a King James Bible. And it worked pretty well. And every stinking one of you, and those of you that smell good, which is not many of you, by the way, but when you preachers, when you took off for college, you were toting a King James Bible. And some dead professor told you the American Standard was better, or the NIV was better, and that dead professor knows nothing about church building, nothing about revivals, nothing about altar calls. And now you sit today with your NIV Bible or Magic Johnson's HIV Bible. There you sit today. You'd be a lot better off if you had never changed and go back and be the preacher you used to be when you were young. I copied young Jack Hyles' preaching. I copied young Jack Hyles' Bible. I'm 68 years of age. I copied young Jack Hyles' doctrine. I believed in the verbal inspiration of the Bible. As a young Jack Hyles, I believe in the verbal inspiration of the Bible now. Some of you ladies look at me and quit acting like you're disgusted. I'm about to pull my curtain down, act like I'm on the radio, and let you have it. You're tempting me not to preach with you, but to you all of a sudden. And some of you preachers, reach over and ask your wife if it's okay for you to listen. I did not believe in the hyper-dispensationalism as young Jack Hyles. I believe that Adam got saved by faith, and Eve got saved by faith, and Noah got saved by faith, Abraham got saved by faith, and everybody who ever gets saved, ever has been saved, ever is saved, everybody goes to heaven and get there because they put their faith in Jesus. That's what the young Jack Hyles believe, and that's what the old Jack Hyles believe. I noticed the young Jack Hyles believed in the virgin birth, the sinless life, the vicarious death, the bodily resurrection. Young Jack Hyles didn't believe in hyper-Calvinism, but that whosoever will could come. So the old Jack Hyles does. Young Jack Hyles didn't belong to ministerial assassination, and the old Jack Hyles doesn't belong to it. Oh, but you say, Pastor, you now belong to you pastor of the First Baptist Church. Yeah? And if I ever join a ministerial association, it'd be the last Baptist church in town, too. You say, Brother Hyles, you haven't mellowed when you got older. I checked the word mellow in the dictionary. It means fully ripe, nearly rotten. I checked it this morning. That's what it means. Some of you guys have mellowed. You know you have mellowed, you've yellowed. I copied the young Jack Hyles in his preaching to this day. That man that stood here yesterday, the first convert I ever had, Johnny Mark Gray. I had not seen him for years until about a year or two ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I was preaching. I think it was out east. Guy walked up and said, "You know who I am?" I said, "No, I don't." He said, "I'm Johnny Mark Gray." I couldn't believe it. My first convert. Mr. Gray, Johnny Mark to me, but Mr. Gray, he looked at me and he said, "I wouldn't have recognized you if I'd seen you, Brother Hyles." But he said, if I'd closed my eyes and listened to you preach, I thought I was sitting in the Grange Hall Baptist Church 40 some odd years ago. I walked over one day, one of my secretaries was typing, a lady was typing one of my sermons that I'd preached many, many years ago. As she was typing, tears were falling onto the keyboard, onto the typing keys. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I'm typing one of your older sermons when you're young." She said, "I'd have thought it's sort of like the one you preached last Sunday." She said, "Your preaching is just like it used to be." Not only that, I copied the young Jack Hyles in his preaching. I copied the young Jack Hyles in his Bible. I copied the young Jack Hyles in his doctrine. I copied the young Jack Hyles in his standards. Young Jack Hyles preached against tobacco, so does the old man. Young Jack Hyles preached against liquor, so does the old man. Young Jack Hyles preached against the movies. Boy, I got my wife last night for telling you where we went on our first date. Young Jack Hyles took his girlfriend to the movies, and last night the old Jack Hyles took his girlfriend to the movies. Young Jack Hyles preached against women wearing shorts in public, and so does the old man. Young Jack Hyles preached against mixed swimming, so does the old man. Young Jack Hyles preached against women wearing pants in public, and so does the old man. You say, "I knew you'd say that. I knew it. I didn't want to disappoint you." Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. It's good enough for... I'm saying, Paul said to Timothy, he said, you whip yourself in shape, and you decide what you believe while you're young, and you stick with it. And you decide your convictions while you're young, and you stick with it. And you decide how you preach while you're young, and you stick with it. He said, make yourself what you ought to be, and stick with it. Now, if you grow, get bigger in what you're doing instead of getting a bunch of extra garbage and stuff. I went to East Texas Baptist College, and the president was Dr. H.D. Bruce. By the way, a pretty decent man. And they had a singing group on the campus. One of the songs they sang was "Cigarettes, Whiskey, and Wild, Wild Women." I went to Dr. Bruce's office and expressed my opinion about it. I did that quite often while I was there. And several years passed, and I came here, and the church became the largest church in America. Dr. Bruce called me one day and said he'd like to have lunch with me. I met him at the Mercantile Bank coffee shop in Dallas, Texas. And We sat there and ate a while, and he said, Dr. Hyles, he said, your college would like to honor you. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe they were going to honor me. And I said, Dr. Bruce, what do you mean? He said, like give you a doctor's degree. We'd like to have you speak on chapel for a week. Call it Jack Hyles Week. I almost fainted. I said, what's the catch? Well, he said, no catch, but he said, here's the only thing you'll have to do. He said, I know your position on some things. He said, you just can't mention these sins by name. Just let the folks that know you hate sin, but don't mention all these little things that you pick on all the time by name. I got up and said, good day. Walked away. I said, he shook his head, gave me one of the greatest compliments I've ever had. He said, same old Jack. Same old Jack. I copy his standards, I copy his doctrine, I copy his Bible, I copy his preaching, I copy his methods. Informal services, young Jack Hyles did, so does the old man. Personal soul winning, young Jack Hyles did, so does the old man. Old-fashioned preaching, young Jack Hyles did, so does the old man. Praising God, the young Jack Hyles did, so does the old man. I just thought I'd tell you that. Now let me give you some things young Jack Hyles did in the way of methods. First, I took time each Sunday at the Grange Hall Baptist Church, a little church in the country edge of town, to honor members who had birthdays that week. We invited the families to come. Families that belonged to the church and families that didn't belong to the church, made a big deal out of it. You see, we didn't have any prospects. We took a census. We found 7 prospects. We had no prospects. We had to dig them out. So every time I could have any kind of a service that honored somebody in a very special way, I'd do it, because that's when their parents and grandparents and cousins and uncles and aunts come, and we'd get some prospects every Sunday. We'd have the person stand. If it was their birthday, we'd have them come down to the front. We'd sing happy birthday to them. I'd give them some little gift and say a word about them. And now we couldn't do that now. Good night. We had everybody had a birthday last week in our church. We'd have 1,000 people down here, and we couldn't do that. But it's